Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Man on Second podcast. My name is Eric Wiedeke, and as always, I'm joined by Joe Frisaro. A little bit of a different release date today, as the schedule, obviously, I'm sure everyone knows, we have 4th of July weekend upcoming, and we wanted to save the real fireworks for today. So, Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric. Yeah, we're getting ahead of the Fourth of July weekend. I hope everyone has a great weekend and is partying Sunday night, Monday. And so instead of doing this, releasing it on Monday, we're doing it, and we're going to take the weekend off like everyone else. We'll be ready to roll on the other end of it. But obviously, you can find our podcast on the Five Reasons Sports YouTube channel and on the at Man on 2ND Twitter handle as well. Obviously, hit those like, subscribe buttons as we kind of grow this thing out. And from the Marlins standpoint, as they're heading into the big weekend, Eric, Sandy Alcantara kind of do a life support out there, do a little life raft in the water. Obviously it's crunch time for the Marlins with the trade deadline. Now we're into July, the trade deadline August 2nd, but reality is they got about the All-Star break. These next couple of weeks are going to determine really if they're still within striking distance. And even when we say striking distance, 7 games out, and we're the final wild card as we record this. And, obviously, 6 or so games under 500. So they need a lot more to go right in the next weekend.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, boy, if it's almost they almost have to have Sandy pitch every single night. It feels like, for them to really have a shot to get back into this. No, but I think they're coming up to a really crucial spot in the schedule. The MLB season is really cut into a few different milestones. One of those being Memorial Day weekend, kind of being the unofficial quarter mark of the season, and then you've got 4th of July, which is kind of where teams take that inventory and they say, are we going to be buyers or are we going to be sellers at the deadline? The Marlins are kind of caught in that in between area right now. I don't think that they'll be either one, and as you mentioned, you don't think they'll be either one in particular, really. But it's kind of symbolic of where the season is right now, that they're just kind of in flux. But I will say the one positive upcoming is the Marlins are a team that this year, and I will preface this by saying so far, they've taken care of business against, lesser opponents. They played well against Colorado. They played well against Washington this year. They've got a significant amount of games where they're playing Washington, they're playing Pittsburgh, they're playing Cincinnati. They need to take advantage of that if they want to be in a position to where they're looking and they're saying, you know what can we add at the deadline versus what can we subtract? What young guys can we get a look at? They need to take advantage of what's in front of them right now in terms of their schedule.
Well put. And I just tell you from what I know from my inquiries with people that I interact with within the organization and around the league. There's a reason why I'm wearing my sweep shirt. If you notice,
Yep.
got the broom going, because there's some urgency to, obviously, 4-game series with the Nationals, but symbolically, winning 4 in a row may be kind of crucial for them right now at Washington if they want to still hang around. And keep in mind, we're just talking about the Marlins trying to get back towards 500. That's not even to say whether the Cardinals or the Brewers or the Giants or the teams in front of the Marlins, they could get hot and just run away with this. And they have a say too. But I think, as we reflect on the series with the St. Louis Cardinals, which wasn't a good series, they lost the series. They lost 2 out of 3 to a team in front of them, a team that's currently holding the 3rd wild card spot in the National League. And they, quite frankly, deserve to lose Wednesday's game based on how they performed, mainly in the field and some of their botched plays. However, while I say that, Sandy Alcantara didn't deserve to lose that game. The Marlins deserve to.
Yeah.
But the beauty of baseball and the beauty of Sandy and going 9 innings and and obviously El Garcia with the clutch 2-run homer in the ninth inning to put him ahead. They find themselves, like I said, Sandy again stepping up. And I thought it was really critical. I want your thoughts on this, Eric, because I thought it was a very key moment for Don Mattingly, who hasn't had his best year managing this club. They haven't really responded. Just knowing Donnie the way I do for all the years covering him, Donnie likes to be the same guy every day. He tries to be Mr. Cool, Mr. Level. He doesn't get overreactionary either way. Tries to be the same guy, but the team has lacked some fire. Is lacked sometimes. It looked like he should have gone out there a few weeks back with Jazz when he got rung up and he let him get thrown out of the game. If you notice in that game, Soler didn't go to Jazz's defense either. It's almost like they let Jazz hang out to dry. And, it just seems like there's a disconnect with this team. But Donnie going to the mound with Sandy at 115 pitches after the walk in the single, 1 out in the ninth inning, and not taking Sandy out, basically looking him in the eye, asking him how he feels, and basically entrusting his ace, I thought was very key, his biggest moment. And then Sandy gets the ground ball double play to end it, makes Donnie look good for that, makes Sandy looks good. And I think, what's going to be key if this team does somehow rally to stick around and make August and September fun is these veteran players, these core players are going to have to save their own season. And Donnie basically entrusted to his best pitcher. You go get him. Tanner Scott was ready to go, but he went with Sandy and it worked out. And I think that's a message that Donnie sent. I thought it was his most significant managerial in-game message was the, going against what analytics would say, or, third or fourth time to an order, or 115 pitches, and saying, look, you're my guy. You told me you could get the guy. You're going to be an all-star. You go and get the guy. And he got the double play. And I think also that weighed into that didn't really get mentioned too much. With Thursday's scheduled off day, Sandy gets another day before he has to go pitch. He's lined up, I guess, to face the Angels early next week here in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to make more out of it than it is. It's 1 out of 162. But it did feel like a big moment because it getting swept by the Cardinals at this point would have been a real gut punch for the team. So I think it's understated how big of a spot that actually was in the ninth inning there with 2 on and 1 out. But even let's be clear, I don't know even if Donnie had gone out there intending to take Sandy out of the game, if Sandy would have let him take the ball out of his hands there, because I'm looking at the conversation and all I'm seeing is Sandy's he wanted that guy's and that's the mentality that you need your guys to have, especially because Sandy's a guy that he wants to go out there and he wants to dominate every time out, and I hope that fire is contagious in that clubhouse from Sandy, and not necessarily that I think it's quote unquote lacking from anybody else, but it's just one of those things where you see Sandy gut it out for 115 pitches. Mattingly comes to the mound. Sandy doesn't really know Mattingly's just coming out there to tell him, hey, I trust you. Go get him. So he's fighting to stay in the game. He's as fired up as can be as he rolls the double play ball. That's got to be something that kind of, at least I hope it sparks in the clubhouse a little bit of that fire.
Well, if it doesn't, nothing will, because it is real. There's literally the All-Star break to, if they're 10 games under by the All-Star break, bye about 5 or 6 of these veterans, or they're at least going to be shopping them if there's any takers. And I can tell you they are still hopeful to be buyers, but, it's still unclear. They are still waiting and seeing. Those decisions haven't been made yet. But again, a hot streak by the Brewers and Cardinals and the teams already in the wild card, they run off 10 of 11, let's say, and the Marlins are just going 5-5 or even 6-4 every now and then in 10-game windows. and it's going to be over anyway.
Right.
Let's be honest, it's probably over. But, this is the last kind of gasp time for this core of players to kind of hold it together or not. And, and you're right. You don't want to overstate one game because it's a Sandy Alcantara start. And it's not, there's still 4 other starters that have to get the job done as well in between. But, again, if there's anything we want this podcast to stress, or at least, as we head into this weekend, just that they haven't decided yet, the Marlins, whether or not they haven't thrown the towel in on the season. They're still hopeful to be buyers to some degree. But there's definite urgency. And today, there's a real acknowledgement that their window to compete right now is, they got to start looking to make moves if it's not going to be going their way. But, they're being held on by the extra wild card for, which was something that I know I advocated, and I believe on this podcast we did for an expanded playoff, at least 2. Now, it would have been real interesting if they expanded to what the league originally wanted, which was 6, 7 in each of it, 14 total. 7 in each league. Man, that would have made it really interesting. But it definitely would have watered it down. There's no doubt. Yeah. But, they have hope because of the new rule. And, Sandy stepped up. Your quick thoughts also on Garcia, because I have some thoughts on Garcia, who rightfully has taken a lot of heat. He's their highest paid position player. And, he came in with an expectation, and he has not had a good first half by any stretch. But just doing some research, and, what I try to tell people on social, and I'm not making the lineup card out. I have suggestions that I would think, but I do agree that he should be in that, maybe not 3 or 4, but really 5, maybe at the lowest 6 in the order, because of what he did on Wednesday night. This guy is legit threat. I mean, homering the dead center on 99 miles an hour with 1 out to go in your game. They don't have many guys on this roster that can do that. He is one of them. And I also keep in mind, when you look at his numbers, he averages 21 homers and 80 RBIs a year. So you stick with him. Obviously his biggest moment as a Marlin. Obviously you need much more than that, but just your general thoughts about Garcia. And to be honest, I'm super surprised that, this guy hunts first pitch fastballs, and not that you don't throw him one.
Yeah.
But I can't believe that was the last guy in the lineup, because I think Miggy is behind him. Even if you walk him or give up a single, you can't give up a home run to him there. And even though it's a hard thrower, I don't know how you stay anywhere near the heart of the plate, with a first pitch fastball. But just that's another story. But just your thoughts on Garcia and that moment.
I think it was a great moment for him. He ends June, I think, slashing 274, 319, 419. So he's something a little bit more in line with his career numbers. And I think that's an important milestone for him, is that, at the very least, he hasn't hit that, that hot streak yet to get himself back to, kind of more in line with his career numbers overall. But you've seen him do it over the course of a month now, where he's kind of been, at the very least, the guy that the Marlins expected him to be. Maybe not necessarily with the power just yet, but he's literally been his career averages over the month of June. So I do think that there is certainly more meat on the bone when it comes to Avi Garcia. The biggest thing for him at the plate is really his approach. You said it, hunting first pitch fastball, and he does that a lot, and sometimes it's to his detriment. But when pitchers do try to, go dead red that first pitch, he's on it. But I do think, and I'm hopeful that, a moment like that could be something for him as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. And while we're on him, because Donnie kind of intimated on it, he'd been kind of banged up, dealing with a few little issues physically. And then Soler not being in the lineup because did he also have back or hand? I can't
Yes,
remember.
he got pulled
Yeah,
for a back issue.
he got scratched. So yes, I know that these were their big free agent offensive signings, and they haven't necessarily picked it up to the pace that was expected. But Soler a little troublesome because with back, and we're going to get over right now to the bigger one. But Soler being sidelined for a couple of days, if it leads to more, certainly doesn't help. And then the catalyst of the team, their most exciting, electrifying player, and not in terms of batting average, but in terms of slugging, OPS, homers, RBIs, and everything else he brings to the table. Jazz Chisholm Jr. on the IL, the right lower back strain, progressed from back spasms. My question, Eric, and my concern was, could they have done this differently? Because at least once or two, definitely once, but at least potentially twice, he's in for a bat or two or an inning or two, was dealing a little bit with it, and shut down one day. We know he was back last Saturday in Miami in the Bohemian Heritage Night, and he, had fun in that night playing in front of his countrymen. But the Marlins seem to act like, oh, give him a day. They did that with Wendell with the hamstring, give him a day, and missed a month. Hopefully he comes back soon. But just your thoughts on Jazz and what this means.
Yeah, I think a player with Jazz, there's a few different spots that you would need to be very careful with him, especially with the way that he swings the bat. Because he twists himself in knots, in just about every swing as hard as he swings it. The back is definitely one of those areas I would be very cautious with him. I think, and I think it's a little bit of the organization kind of. Sometimes you need to protect players from themselves, and I think the organization, Jazz will take a day, and with back issues, it's a little tricky. Because you can feel fine doing, one moment and then the next, all of a sudden, oh, there it goes, And so I genuinely believe that the days that he played, he felt fine. But it's just one of those things that, just one wrong motion and all of a sudden you're set back. And now it looks like he's set back a couple of weeks. So I do think that, especially with a young player that might, be hesitant to say, oh, well, I don't feel 100% today. He wants to be out there every game. He definitely cares about being out there for the fans. I think they could have done a little bit of a better job protecting him from himself.
Yeah, I agree. They're pretty much, you go around the room. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? But you could watch and see how a guy moves.
Right.
And it's not just one at bat. I see it all the time. And, how, he's kind of favoring in between pitch. He takes a pitch and you see him stretching his back as before the next pitch. And, it's how's he looking, during batting practice, how's the swing looking? They know, they pick up on everything. How does he, when he's taking ground balls? I know there's a lot of load management and there's less pregame batting practice on field stuff than even a few years ago when I was out there every day. But you got to be on top of your guys and find out, and you could observe they don't look right. And maybe you give them a day or 2 days, or maybe IL them right then and there, rather than prolong it. But obviously, terrible news for the fact that backs can be, well, this is more than back spasms now. And, Jazz is leading the second baseman in the vote totals in National League to be the starting all-star. And from the league standpoint, Jazz has really established himself. We talked many times about this as, as one of the fun personalities and young talents in the sport. He's somebody, when you're at the game, your eyes gravitate to him. He has a presence about him. He has a charisma. He's fun. He plays the game fun. We love Jazz. There's so much we root him real hard for him. And we know that playing in LA in that stage would be just amazing. And it's not that it's out of the question, but do you have to be a little concerned that he will be even available should he win the vote?
Yeah, I do have my questions. I think and I hate to be the fun police on this one. If I'm the Marlins and I'm in the front office, I'm telling Jazz no. If like, let's say if the cutoff is like right before the All-Star game and he's, you know, just right when he would be coming back, I would give him the extra few days. I'd tell him take the days off, you know. And it's unfortunate that you have to do that to a guy, you know, who's you know, going to have his first opportunity to play in the game. But you've got to do the right thing by the player. Whether he knows it or not, I do think that would ultimately end up being the right thing in that situation. Now, there's always a chance, you know, he's completely cleared and good to go by then. But, you know, I would be very
ultimate
careful.
best case scenario.
Yeah.
And again, we're hoping for that, but you know, being realistic. Reminds me a little bit of a few years back when D. Gordon was having such a great first half, and he was going to be an all-star, and then he stole a base and he slid, and I think he caught his thumb on the bag, if I remember correctly, and he broke his thumb, and you know, just right on the eve of the All-Star game, and it kept him out of there. That's what this is reminding me a little bit of, with just the unfortunate timing of it, if it denies him the opportunity to be in LA. Now, I guess he could, if he makes the team and if he's voted the starter, he could always go, just not play and just participate and just hang around, because there is value in that, you know, that aspect of just being part of the All-Star game and seeing how players prepare and interacting. That's invaluable. And I'll give Sandy Alcantara as an example. I really think back in 19, I believe, when Sandy made the All-Star team, and he kind of, the Marlins needed an All-Star. There was debate whether Miggy Rose should go or whatever. Sandy got the nod, and wasn't really having a great year.
Right.
It was being solid enough, but he actually pitched in that game, did very well. But he came back, and just his interaction and being around the All-Stars, he was a different guy in the second half of that season. And they kind of carried over into 2021 and 22, when, the debate will be, Sandy's on the team. There's no doubt he's going to make the team. The question is he the starter? I think we discussed that the other day, and it's fun to see it. So MLB tweet out the front runners for the Cy Young or whatever being Shane McClanahan up in Tampa and Sandy Alcantara here in Miami. And it'd be fun to see both of them face each other and start the All-Star game against each other. That's what we're kind of pulling for. But as we switch over to Sandy, the All-Star, because I just basically let him, if he wants to start, he could throw 2 innings. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I have no problem with that either. Just as an aside, I think the now that I really think about it, and I wanted to ask you, because this is something that I was thinking of myself, knowing Jazz, knowing his influences as a ball player, obviously, looked up to Ken Griffey Jr. a ton. Hypothetically, had he been healthy, maybe he gets another 3 or 4 home runs in this stretch. He wouldn't have passed up on the opportunity to do the Derby if they would have asked.
Oh, I think just even with 14, I think he would have,
exactly.
Yeah, I don't think he would have to hit another one. Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. I can't imagine under any circumstance he does the Derby, but yeah, I'm sure Jazz would have loved to do the home run Derby, and I'm sure he would have been. He would have been, if a healthy Jazz Chisholm Jr. getting voted in the starter and performing and running around and stealing bags and doing all the fun things that he does on the field. Oh, I could see definitely, I could see them hyping him up for the Derby. As imagine him and Acuna, let's say, in round 1 against each other or something like that. If Acuna wanted to do the Derby, I'm just saying, however they pair him off. But that would, you could do all sorts of fun things with Jazz and the Derby. But yeah, absolutely, I thought he would have been a no-brainer. And the league would probably want him in a big way too. The more they could get his face on camera, I think they would have been wanting to do that in a big way.
Absolutely, and Just to kind of flip this back on the Marlins, because as you mentioned, this weekend does look like Joey Wendell's probably going to rejoin the club. Really kind of awkward timing, because Wendell coming back is a huge relief for them, but obviously they were looking forward to having Wendell and kind of lengthening the lineup rather than just replacing Jazz with Wendell there. So a little bit of an unfortunate, especially in such a pivotal stretch, for them to have to replace Jazz with Wendell rather than to add him to and lengthen the lineup.
No, no question, no question. Well, foremost, and I was watching a couple of his rehab assignments, and just seeing him swing the bat. He's looking fine. It's going to be big for him to come back, but hamstrings are bothersome, and you just, it barked on him a couple of times. You hope that they got it, and but as you know, it's not. Yes, you could use John Birdie more, but Brian Anderson's just back too, and so you're going to now your Jazz's injury chips it back into your depth, and not just lengthening the lineup, which you mentioned is very valid, because that's what's really hurting this team, is the bottom of their order just hasn't kept pace to with the level of the teams in front of them in the race. And now you could have, in a perfect world, you have a Jazz playing at an all-star level, Miggy getting better. You got Andy could ease back in while Birdie plays. And then when Birdie's playing and he's getting his timing back, Wendell could ease Jazz a day off and he eases back in. And now all of a sudden you got two guys who have been on the IL for a good month, meaning Anderson and Wendell, and they're going to be asked to play more. So how do you divide that up? John Birdie's got to be out there even more, and he's still best when he's not an everyday guy, because he has value and you don't want to overexpose him. But then you're down to the Eric Gonzalez's. Is he still on the roster? You're carrying somebody or a Luke Williams. You're still kind of carrying more organizational depth than the guys you need to help you make up ground.
Right. I mean, in a perfect world, I think the biggest thing that Wendell coming back would have done with a healthy Jazz was, I would have been a lot more interested to see John Birdie, the utility infielder, become John Birdie, the utility outfielder. That's what I would have, been looking for. Now he's going to have to do a little bit more in the infield again. But that's the way it goes over the course of 162. Guys get hurt all the time. We don't even know what's going to go on with Jorge Soler. There might have to be, depending on what's going on with him, there might have to be another call up.
That's why I just not to interrupt you there, but when I see some people, they'll tweet out, "Oh, they're going to get everyone back," and it's like you're making, and now we got this. These seasons are, you get someone back, it doesn't mean all of a sudden that no one else gets hurt. You're always on guard about that, and you're never that comfortable. That's why front offices and the guys and gals that do roster management, service time and options. This is why when people are losing their mind over, a guy in AAA not getting called up, LeBlanc or they're going nuts over there about Charlie LeBlanc. It's like, there's a reason why these people get called up. It's not a high school team where you have everyone in your schools there and you could carry 40 guys on your team. You got to figure out how to get them in service time, the amount of options, allow your minor league guys that you're giving more time to develop. And that's how you're piecing it together. It's not just the most deserving guy all the time. Because Yuri Perez, if you want to do that, should be in the big leagues. If you want, he deserves it.
Oh yeah,
if you want to just do that, but then what happens? He has a rough first two starts, and you got option him down. Now you burn an option, maybe blow his confidence a little bit. It's a lot of factors, and that's why you try to. I think I mentioned this. I think I'd mentioned with David Fernandez on our prospect podcast when the Marlins were. Jacksonville was playing against the Yankees AAA team, and that team had Derek Dietrich on it. They just were loaded. Ender Inciarte, who I think got released and he's on somebody else's big league roster.
He's with the Mets, actually.
Yeah, it was like, I guess he took an opt
Yep.
out and went there. But my point was, when I was watching, and I was watching some of those games on the minor league TV on the app, and because Dietrich's a friend of the show and everything as well, is the amount of former big leaguers that with a little bit more of a proven track
Yep.
record that made that roster up. But that's the Yankees. Their aspirations aren't, oh, we're going to compete this year. They know they're trying to compete. They know,
Right.
they want to get guys with 5-6 years of big league experience to replace significant experience rather than
Yep.
just kind of that float around utility player. But the Marlins are using AAA for the development of Blade and Burdick and Lewin and Encarnacion. It's a little different structure.
Right.
So the Marlins AAA roster isn't really loaded with those type of players, which, because some guys, they may not want to sit, they may retire or whatever. It may not mean as much to them to keep hanging on to be in the minor leagues. But if you're with the Yankees system, knowing that next man down, you might be in the big leagues
Exactly.
a lot faster. So a lot goes on there. But I just thought it was interesting that Yankees AAA club was a lot more, looked like if you look 5 years ago, some of these guys were like all-star caliber players.
Yeah. I think I do think that's an interesting thing to be brought up, because obviously when it comes to organizational depth, that's where the Marlins are still, lacking a little bit. And they made, and don't get me wrong, they made a lot of moves to improve that over the course of the offseason, bringing in, guys like Joey Wendell that can kind of do everything. And so, but ultimately it just proves, the Marlins have a little bit of a ways to go when it comes to that, because they still have to call up, the Luke Williamses. And so they're just kind of playing catch up on that right now. And it's going to take a few years to build.
Yeah. And some of those guys do a salary, because you could get in Inciarte, maybe, hey, you're making $1 million down the minors, that type
right.
of thing.
Yeah.
And then you get called up and you get what, I don't know his exact contract. I'm just saying, though, they could give a fatter contract to sit in the minor leags.
Exactly.
With even if they get a month and a half of big league service time or time, then you may make $1.5 million or whatever prorated. So they make it a little more financial. They have the finances to make that a little bit more rewarding for those type of players to go into their system. But just food for thought. And we're wrapping this up. We pretty much stayed exclusive on the Marlins as we head into this weekend. But we did want to give that one last good podcast before we head to a very big weekend for the Marlins, for Major League Baseball. And Eric, I hope you have a fun 4th, and don't light off too many fireworks, and keep your neighbors up. But do have some fun, and tell people how they can find us and take us out, my friend.
Absolutely. So as always, you can find us on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That does increase our reach. It makes you guys more able to see it, and it makes us more visible to be seen. You can also find us at Man on Second on Twitter. That's going to be at Man on 2ND, where you can catch our podcasts, clips, as well as commentary. And just have a happy and safe 4th, everybody. And like Joe told me, just be safe. Let's everybody keep our fingers. All right. Have a good one.